All right, so we are live and we are here and we're doing this. Today's topic was something my wife and I were talking about last night because of my video yesterday. My video yesterday was about um, how we're kind of being conned into thinking of uh, global heating, which is real because it's physics. Gravity is real because of physics. Okay, we've been conned into thinking about global heating as if it were not physics, as if it were uh, just, local phenomena, weather, right? Common things, opinions. Your opinion is as good as mine, right? Um, and that part of the way that they do that, the powers that be, because that is what they're doing, because they feel compelled to do that. Why? I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but they feel compelled to do that to keep us kind of going ahead and just pretending that nothing is wrong. And the way they were doing that is by getting us to focus on numbers. And that's what that whole video was about. I think it was about as good a discussion as I've attempted on why numbers are dangerous. I'm a scientist. I'm all about the numbers, right? I'm all about, and global heating is a number, right? What's the temperature of the earth? We could talk about the earth being hot, but in the end, we just have to recognize the earth is getting hot. There you go. The Titanic is sinking. Hit an iceberg. The water's coming in. Okay, now it's sinking. Okay, there you go. Physics. It's done. You don't have to really talk about it anymore. It's sinking, and the Earth is heating. So there you go. How bad could it get? Well, we don't know. The scientists are still debating that. I mean, that's how scientists are, right? They look at the data and they discuss the data and they try and come up with some kind of a theory about how bad it could get based on the data. And that's the level of debate. How bad could it get? But in the common media, that is not the point of the discussion. So my wife and I have this discussion quite a bit. Uh, it's hard not to focus on the numbers. And it's even hard not to focus on the tragedies that come from global heating, because that's going to be the next big distraction, right? Oh, look at the tragedies. The poor, Great Barrier Reef, and it was so beautiful, and Jacques Cousteau, and now we won't have a Great Barrier Reef. And what are we going to do? It's so terrible. We should save the Great Barrier Reef. Well, you can't save the Great Barrier Reef. You can't at this point because of physics. It's not because we don't want to. It's because you can't. And all the penguins are going to die. Most of the species of penguin are going to go extinct. Well, you can't do anything about that. That's just going to happen. In fact, we're in the sixth mass extinction, right? Lots of things are going to go extinct. Some of them because of what we are doing, some of them because of what, they are doing or not doing about their situation. And, a lot of animals, a lot of plants just can't save themselves. So now we have a sixth mass extinction. And maybe we did that, maybe we didn't. Maybe extinctions are a good thing, maybe extinctions are a bad thing. You can have that debate, you can discuss it, you can go there, right? And spend all your time talking about it, wanting to save the penguins and the polar bears and the baby harp seals and the whole thing, but you can't because of physics. So, why go there? I'm a biologist. Why? Right? I got into biology because I love nature, and there were terrible things happening to nature, and I got all fired up about that back in the 70s, the 80s, when I was going to school and had time to be fired up about things. And here I am. I'm a biologist sitting right here, and I'm telling you, it's too late to worry about the warm fuzzies because of physics. So there you go. Does it make me heartless? No. It makes me a scientist. I'm looking around me and I'm saying, well, okay, here we go, right? And if you want to have a conversation about saving something, and this is also debatable. I mean, a lot of people are having this discussion and they're not sure what side of the discussion they're going to come down on. Maybe we should talk about human extinction. We could have that discussion, right? The sixth mass extinction. The dinosaurs looked unassailable. They're extinct. At different times, there were species dominating the seas and they became extinct. Okay, so how successful you've been and how powerful you are and how you dominate your environment or even the entire planet, I guess that doesn't really matter in some cases, right? So we could talk about human extinction, and and you say, well, that's unconscionable. I mean, we have to save all of nature, but you can't because of physics. If the leading theory on why the dinosaurs went extinct was because a gigantic meteor hit the earth and killed them all because of physics. It doesn't matter how you feel about the dinosaurs or how cute they were or how savage they were, how majestic they were, how pretty they were, and how dominant they were, and how it's so sad the world doesn't have dinosaurs. You could come down on that side of it, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Because there are no dinosaurs because of physics. Okay. And all those people that died on the Titanic, they didn't really die of bad lifestyle choices. I mean, you could paint it that way if you wanted to and say, well, they just shouldn't have been on a boat. They should have stayed where they were. Well, you could do that. But I mean, honestly, they didn't die because they were bad people making bad personal choices. They died because of physics. The boat couldn't float because of all the water coming in. And so the boat sank and it took people down and they died. They drowned in the cold water because of physics. Because boats that can't float don't float, they sink because of physics. So at some point, you can pretend that you have all these choices, but you just don't. That's out of your hands. The dinosaurs looked up, saw the meteor, and they were dead. No fault of their own. You can't say, oh, they were on the wrong planet or whatever, they should have been underground, but they weren't. And the meteor, and they hit the earth, and everything was destroyed because of physics. And so here we are. Here we are, you and I, and all those people that aren't here. It's just you and I and some friends of yours, and we're here because of physics. It's called global heating. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here. And presumably something about the title or something about my long-term message and all my videos. The algorithm, YouTube snacked you and threw you in here and said, here, you need to watch this. Okay, so here I am, and I'm telling you, global heating is physics. And there's nothing you can do about physics. And you can disagree and say, well, we can do that, we can do that. Okay, but are you dealing with physics? Because that's what you have to do. You have to find a way to make the boat float. All right. You can't get rid of the gravity that's going to sink the Titanic. You have to figure out how to make the boat float. Can you do that when there's a big hole in the side of the boat? Can you fix that so the boat will float so there's no water in it? Because that's your challenge, because gravity wins. And right now, our problem with global heating, which is just atmospheric physics, is physics. And what you think about it, and whether it's a hoax or whether it's real or whether it's human caused or caused by, unicorn farts or whatever you think or your friends think or you heard or you saw in a video somewhere or you read in the National Enquirer, whatever you think or heard or believe, it's because of physics. The earth is round. It's not flat. The earth is round because of physics. Have I made my point? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe I can't make this point. Maybe there's just people that can't be reached. Okay, fine. So, just in case you're completely new and you've never been here before and you've never heard my spiel and you don't know what I'm talking about, here are the physics behind global heating. The planet is getting hot. This can be measured. It's called instrumental data. We can measure the heat of the planet. It's easy to do. And we measure the heat of the planet 50 times a day from millions of different instruments, some of which are in space and look down on the planet and collect temperature data from all these little points on the planet. The surface, the tops of the mountains, the valleys, the deserts, the surface of the water, the surface of the ocean, the ice sheets, the tops of the trees in the Amazon rainforest. Looks down from space and looks at all the places, every square meter, every square yard. Okay, looks down from space and just measures the temperature. And the Earth goes around, and the satellite goes around the Earth, and it gets a chance to do that several times a day. Just every little spot on the Earth. measures the temperature. How does it do that? It does it from space. But how? What's the instrument? I don't know. Was it reading infrared radiation? I don't know. I don't care. That's what they do. And so they also have thermometers on ships crossing the sea. They've had that for hundreds of years, and they have thermometers on buoys that float out at sea. They have thermometers on buoys that aren't anchored. They're called Argo floats, and there are literally thousands of them. Maybe even at this point, tens of thousands. They just throw them in the water and they float around the oceans, and they measure everything: the salinity, the temperature, the current, their location, right? And they have GPS, and they know, and they radio all this information back to the scientists who just record the information. That's an instrument. It measures the temperature. We measure temperatures on airplanes, so they're measuring the temperature way up in the sky. We measure temperature on rockets that scientists send up every day. They've been doing that for decades, sending up rockets, well, balloons usually, but they can also use rockets. They send them way up in the atmosphere and they record the temperature profile in the atmosphere. They do this all over the world, many, many, many times a day, all over the planet. It's data, it's instruments, and so it's all physics, right? They just know, they know the temperature. And they can plot the temperature, and they can do averages, and they can do models, and they can do different things, and they can say, oh, look, the temperature is not changing, so the Earth isn't warming. Great. Except that's not what they say, because that's not what they see. Instead of seeing just a nice, a little bit of variation, but basically a flat line that says not changing, not changing, not changing, not changing, they see change, and the line is going up. Line goes up, and now they're saying, whoa, the world is getting hotter. Instrumental. We just read it with a thermometer. Well, we read it with millions of thermometers, but it doesn't matter. It's a thermometer. It's one gigantic thermometer that covers the whole Earth. And the instrument told us that the Earth is getting hot. And that actually is in alignment with atmospheric physics, because we would expect it to. Because the CO2 in the atmosphere, I'm saying all this because I'm assuming that you're new and you kind of don't know this. The CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing. CO2 is a greenhouse gas. That means the greenhouse is a euphemism for a component of the atmosphere that can trap heat. There are components of the atmosphere that reflect sunlight, like clouds, for example, or aerosols, sulfates, and other things that can be reflective. Ice, snow are also reflective. So there are things that reflect sunlight back out into space, and there are things that trap heat. And these are all different things. And CO2, carbon dioxide, is a heat-trapping gas that exists in the atmosphere. It's always been there. There's always been a certain amount of it. And sometimes there's a lot of it. And recently, we've been able to measure it. Well, recently meaning like 50 years or so. And what we're noticing is that it's going up. The CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing. Now, people knew 150 years ago, scientists knew 150 years ago that CO2 was important in setting the temperature of the Earth. And they surmised that if it were to increase, it would heat the Earth. The CO2 would trap more heat. Okay, the heat ultimately comes from the sun, but it's not the sun that's heating the Earth. The sun has been up there for billions of years, and different things happen to the sun, but we're not seeing any real significant changes in the sun's output, meaning radiation, that would account for problems or differences or changes here on Earth. But one thing we do know is happening, because we can measure it, is that the CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere is increasing. That's interesting. And that was actually predicted. Like I said, 150 years ago, that was predicted. And people said, well, if we keep burning coal, because that's what they were burning at the time, this is going to inject carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere, along with a bunch of other crap, which we had to breathe at the time, still do to this day. But the one we're more worried about in terms of the greenhouse effect is the carbon dioxide gas that comes from the combustion of coal, oil, and natural gas. You get CO2 as one of the byproducts of combustion. So it goes into the atmosphere, and there it resides. And there's different opinions on how long it resides there, but it resides there for a really long time. There's CO2 in the atmosphere still that was emitted in 1850. It can hang around up there for thousands of years, if not millions, certainly tens of thousands. So basically, once it's up there, it just stays there, pretty much. It's for our practical purpose, and then this discussion, you can assume it just stays there. Complicated by the fact that some of the things that could remove CO2 are themselves being removed, like forests and wetlands and some other stuff. So we're messing around with the carbon cycle. We're setting fire to fossil fuels. We're digging them out of the ground. setting them on fire, emitting the CO2 in the atmosphere, and that's where it wants to stay. So this has been going on for hundreds of years. And we took a keen interest in it recently because people kind of knew there was a problem. I wasn't there. I was probably a child when these discussions were taking place. And most of the people that were there when they decided to start looking at this, they've retired or they've even died of old age. It was a long time ago, okay? For practical purposes. It was 2 generations ago. So we've got a lot of data. But mostly we just understand how the greenhouse effect works and the role of CO2 and our role as humans who are burning fossil fuels to do all of our fun things, right? It's fun to burn fossil fuels. Look at all these people driving up and down in front of my house. They're going to fun places. They're going to work. Not fun, but you need the money anyway. So they're going to work. They're going to school. They're going to the shopping center. They're going to the mall. Hey, maybe they're going someplace really fun, right? It could be. So we burn fossil fuels to do all the things. And the CO2 goes in the atmosphere. And scientists knew this. They know that then. They knew that now. And so it's all fine. We understand this. It's just physics. That's why it can be understood. It's not politics. It's not economics. It's not religion. It's physics. It can be understood and people understand it. And they can measure it. It's instrumental. You can measure it with an instrument. And the heat that's being accumulated in the atmosphere is measured instrumentally. And you can plot the data and you can watch the heat increasing. And you can see it increasing more in some places and maybe a little less in some others. And that's interesting. So why would that be the case? And they can ask those questions. Why is it heating up faster in the Arctic than it is with the equator? That's interesting. How's that possible? Well, let's look at the system. Let's look at the Earth system now. Now we're talking system dynamics. And let's look at how the physics of global heating impacts the Earth system. And they've been looking at that too. And they study all these things. And the result is physics. The Earth is heating. And there you go. That's it. And you cannot believe it. And you can think the Earth is flat too. But physics says otherwise. So here we are. I'm here on this side of the camera. You're on that side. And we're talking physics. Simple as that. This is our moment. A physics moment. That established, what should we talk about? Before I go any further, I'll ask you to like the video, and whether you like it or not, right? That's what you're supposed to do. If you're getting anything out of this, and including a challenge, then you should just like the video. Make sure other people get challenged too, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to challenge people. How am I doing? And if you want to get more of this kind of content, give us click the subscribe, because I do this pretty much every day. I'm retired. I can do this. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Stirring people up, telling people how it works. My last video, which was pretty hard hitting. Yeah, I would say so. I ended on this note that we are beyond, whether we know it or not, we are beyond studying this because it's physics. We understand physics. Physics is something humans understand really well. We just do. Maybe not all humans, but a lot of them. I do. So here I am. So I'm telling you, we don't have to study this anymore. Now, there's people who want to study it. For example, the fossil fuel industries want us to study this even as we go over the cliff and be studying it all the way down until we're dashed to pieces on the sharp rocks. Why? Because so long as we're studying it, we're not doing anything about it. That's their play. Good on them. I mean, that's a perfectly legitimate play. They can do that. That'll keep themselves in business. If we just keep studying this and looking at the numbers and looking at the satellite data and looking at the Argo floats and studying it, and drawing the lines, and the line goes up, and the line goes up today, and the line goes up tomorrow, and the line goes up the day after, and the Earth gets hotter, and the greenhouse effect gets better at trapping heat, and there's more CO2, and there's more carbon consumption, and more CO2 being emitted, and the greenhouse effect gets even more, and the temperature goes up, and the line goes up, and everything's getting hotter, and you just keep studying it, and you never step back and say, what the fuck are we going to do? So, yeah, of course they're going to tell us, keep studying it. And they're going to give money to scientists who want to study it, and they'll take the money because, hey, that's their career. studying shit. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, go ahead, study it. That's all you can do. Please continue. Please continue. And who knows? There might be a miracle someday and it just stops heating and starts cooling. And the scientists will be the first ones to notice because no one else can notice. And they might be the first ones to notice. They'll say, oh, look, a sudden cooling trend. Irma Gerd, where's that coming from? We need to study this. I'll say, oh, yeah, you definitely need to study that. What is that? Did we misinterpret something? Did we drop the ball? Do we not understand physics the way we thought we did? Maybe there's something else going on. Definitely study it. So fine, please study. But the rest of us need to start making decisions. And what is that decision? There are two decisions. There are two levels of decisions. There are decisions being made at the top by our leadership, which doesn't really include the scientists. I'm not going to include the scientists in policy. Sometimes they inform policy, but most of the time policy just is like this random thing that politicians come up with. And it suits them, it suits their donors, and it suits their the corporations that pull the strings, and all of that's fine. And politicians are going to do what they have to do because that's their career, their responsibility. And then there's a whole nother set of decisions that happens at the bottom of the decision tree, and that's you and me. And I'll allow that there's also maybe some decision-making power at intermediate levels of government, but not much, because this is global heating. It's the physics of global heating. So global heating happens globally. Some places it's more than others, but doesn't matter. The thing is global. So it's a little difficult to put a lot of responsibility for global heating at the local level. But what happens is and this is the point of this video, that there's a change in the nature of responses and decision making as you go from governments and the UN and climate panels and IPCCs. There's a change in the nature of responsibility as you go down deeper into individual responsibility, not collective. You're at this high thing, and there's also changes at the different levels of collective. So there's, here in the US, we have state governments, and they make collective decisions for the citizens of their state. And then we have local governance, county and cities, and they make decisions on behalf of the citizens of the county and the city. Okay. And then there's even neighborhood collective decisions, and neighbors belong to associations that can make collective decisions about these things. But as you descend the decision hierarchy, the nature of those decisions changes, and that's very important, because you have our neighborhood, our city, our state, our province, whatever. We all, at every level, we do have responsibilities. We do. And you can say, well, I'm not responsible for global heating. It's global. Yeah, and you'd be right. And my wife would argue with me when I say that. And she's entitled to argue with me when I say that. But this is my channel, goddammit, so I'm going to say it. She can fight with me later. Bless her heart. Yeah, you are partially responsible for global heating. There are 8,000 million humans, and every single human alive, really all of them, even the little babies, okay? Even the elders, sleeping their life away in their hospital bed. Every single human being has a responsibility for global heating. Well, we are on this globe. We are all burning fossil fuels one way or another. And so when you burn fossil fuels, you add CO2 to the atmosphere, and some of that CO2 has your name on it. It has your name on it. And so me and you, the lighting that I'm burning right here, this internet connection, everything I'm doing is contributing somehow minutely to putting CO2 in the atmosphere, and it's got my name on it. So every molecule of CO2 on this planet belongs to someone. And why did you put it there? Well, you were just living your life, right? That's it. Food, clothing, and shelter for a lot of people. Just, where's my food come from? And what fossil fuels are embodied in that food? There was a tractor that pulled a plow, and there was another piece of equipment that harvested the food. And then there was a truck that drove the food around, and all that was fossil fuels, probably diesel. And then there was a warehouse, and it had air conditioning. It ran a lot of electricity, and that's fossil fuels generating electricity, most likely. And then there was another truck that took it to a supermarket and put it on the shelf. And that supermarket had to be constructed with fossil fuels, and it's in my neighborhood as a result. And so part of that store being in my neighborhood has my name on it. The fact that there's a store there is there because I am here and I need the food in that store. So part of that store's construction, I don't know what part of it is mine, what, a couple square inches, maybe about 1 square inch of that store has my name on it, because it wouldn't be there except for me and people like me who are going to go down there and buy the food. So there's part of that store that has my name on it, and all the CO2 that went into making that store, and every single day cooling that store, getting the employees there. They all drive there on a car, right? Um, Putting the food on the shelves, swiping in the credit card, all that activity requires fossil fuels. Every single thing, the lighting, the air conditioning, all of it requires fossil fuels. And some of that has my name on it because there's some square inch of that store that's there because of me. And that's just the truth. And you can say, wow, that's a hard way to put it. The store serves all of us. Well, try justifying building, a 2,000 square foot supermarket out in the boondocks. It's not going to happen. Why did they build it here? Because there's a lot of people here. And this store has a lot of really expensive and elite goods. Hell, they've got an aisle of wines and beers, and it's huge. It goes this high and it's this long, and it's just wines and beers. Why? Because people in this community have money to spend on expensive wines and beers, and that whole cabinet is cooled and chilled, and all those wines and beers come from all these different places, and all these trucks pull in and disgorge their cases of wines and beers, and that's all there because I live in this community. I've got money. I can buy a $18 bottle of Belgian ale, and that's why it's there on the shelf, because people have money, and they'll buy expensive, Trappist ales. I'd love to have a Trappist ale right now. I'm going to pull that off. I need to get out of here. I need to go get myself an ale. Anyway, the responsibility for that shit show, because that's basically what it is different from the top to the bottom. My responsibility is to keep myself alive. On an animal level, even on a civilizational level, my responsibility is to keep myself alive. And I will add healthy. So I have some responsibility for my health, right? Do I get exercise, or do I sit in front of the TV all day? Do I cook food and have organic food, or do I just buy junk food at McDonald's? I have some responsibility for that. Maybe not a lot. Maybe if I live in a poor neighborhood and it's a food desert, and the only food that's really available are McDonald's and Wendy's on every corner of every intersection. Well, then maybe that's what I do. But that particular situation aside, I have responsibility for my feeding myself and keeping myself healthy and keeping myself off of drugs. Okay, that's my responsibility. Maybe it's hard. Maybe there's drugs all in my neighborhood. Maybe I'm 14 years old and I'm surrounded by violence and drugs, and so I just get into drugs and violence. So it's not really my responsibility. Plus, I'm 14 years old. I should have adults helping me. But hey, on some level, it's still my responsibility. Less so when I'm 14, more so when I'm 24, and definitely when I'm 34, right? And we all understand that. That's how it works. And I have responsibility for my quality of life and my survival. That is mine. I have to do that. That's why I have an air conditioner in a window over here that's cooling my house right now, even though it's going to get to be 91 degrees here in this community, which is really hot for where we are. I went down and I bought an air conditioner. I put it in the window. That's my responsibility. I have to do that because it's hot. So my health is tied to my environment, and I have some individual responsibility for protecting myself from that. Now, it's not, some people disagree with this, but I'm trying to make a distinction. It's not the government's responsibility to save me from poor lifestyle choices. They can advise me, especially if I'm a child and my parents aren't really advising me. The government could give me advice, but a lot of people would say, no, that's not the government's role at all. And they can make a point about that. It's not the government's role at all. Stop doing that. Some people say, oh, well, we need even more counseling because individuals make bad choices. But the point is, the discussion is about individual responsibility. Whether there's a lot, whether there's a little, that's still the level of discussion. And there's some debate about whether the government, way up here somewhere, the UN, the US Congress, has any responsibility for me personally. Now, as regards to global heating, which is a global thing, the globalness of it implies that it is addressing it is the responsibility of the global institutions. And yet, the problem is caused by individuals. And that's where the real problem is. It doesn't matter that I don't consume much fossil fuels. I consume some. And I am totally dependent on fossil fuels for everything I do. All the food I eat, everything I drink, everything I see, everything I own, my home, my electricity, my fresh water, all of it is delivered or conditioned or altered or something by fossil fuels. All of it, every single thing, everything around me, all the lumber that went into building this house was done at a mill using fossil fuels. And so here we go, right? I am an individual, but I have a global impact. And that's where people come along and say, well, you have to stop burning fossil fuels. Okay, fine. That's recognizing that individuals have responsibility, but not burning fossil fuels may or may not be one of them, because you can't. Because if you stop burning fossil fuels, then you're going to die. Probably. You're just probably going to die. Because we're so dependent on fossil fuels, and we're in a trap. We're in a bind. We're in a bind. This is what's called a wicked problem. So yes, every molecule of carbon that goes into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, every atom of carbon that goes into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide has someone's name on it. It's just this fog of individual activities that's doing this, or larger institutions like factories and factory farms doing this on our behalf as individuals. At the end of every single barrel of oil that's burned, all the services that come out of that eventually accrue to individuals. They might be stockholders, they might be construction workers getting paid, they might be white collar workers writing code, they might be people cleaning toilets, whatever, truck drivers, the people stocking the shelves, or me sitting here living on Social Security or some retirement account or something. Every gallon, every barrel of oil that was ever consumed, every lump of coal that was ever burned, every therm of natural gas that was ever pumped out of the ground and set fire to, it all ends up serving people eventually, somehow. And it all has our names on it. But we can't stop, because if we stop, we'll probably die, because we need all those things. All the things that are being made and distributed with fossil fuels are necessary for life. And when you don't have them, you die. And even if you're homeless and you think, well, okay, so I don't have a home, so I'm not responsible for that much CO2. You're eating food. Are you growing your own food? You're probably not, because you're homeless. You don't have land. And so someone's bringing you food, or you get some cash allotment from the state or the city. And so you go buy food, and you probably buy junk food at a fast food restaurant. And what's going on in there? Well, they're feeding you using fossil fuels. So there you go. And this disparity between, it's a global problem created by individuals who have no agency, is lethal. This is just lethal. There's no easy way out. This is a wicked problem. We're all trapped. We can't get out. There's no way out. There's just no way out. You can stop burning fossil fuels, but you can't. Try. You can't do it. To do that, you would really have to have access to river water that's clean. You'd have to have access to wild food that you can hunt and gather. So back to pre-Stone Age peoples, hunting and gathering. You're just living off of the land. It's kind of a hippie thing, right? You drink from the stream. You eat the berries. You eat the nuts. You dig up the tuber. You just eat it. Like a deer. And you if you could just live off the land, then you're living off of solar power, and that's the sun. And the sun grows the tubers, and the sun grows the berries and the nuts, and the sun, made the squirrels happen and reproduce. And you could eat a squirrel if you needed to, or you had to. You could catch your fish, and the sun provided the energy for fishes. And that whole aquatic food chain is all driven by solar power. And at that point, you'd be running on solar power. The original solar power, not solar panels and wind farms and hydropower. The original, the OG solar panel power. And you'd be off of fossil fuels. But how many people can do that? Virtually nobody. For one reason, because there isn't any such place where you can go and just forage and drink the clean water out of the stream. There's no such place. You can't find it. You just can't. We've cleared all the forests. We've paved everything over. It's just not possible. If you own your own land, how'd you manage that? Okay, but if you own your own land, or you find some abandoned land and everything is kind of doing its own thing, and you find some trees and some berries and some squirrels and some rabbits, and you just set up camp and you just forage there, and you manage not to eat everything, which would be kind of hard to do, and you manage not to eat everything, then maybe you're the one person in a billion who gets to pull that off, until someone catches you on their land and they want you to leave, right? So that's kind of hard to do if you don't own that land. And if you do own the land, how'd that happen? Where'd your money come from? Okay. There are CO2 molecules in the atmosphere that are responsible, that have your name on it because you own land. So it's virtually impossible. It is, for practical purposes, it is impossible for you to stop emitting CO2 and stop living with fossil fuels the way we live now. And this is where the rubber meets the road. If you were going to live in a world without fossil fuels, you'd have to live differently because of physics. Physics and consuming fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, gives us so many things that we would simply not have. You wouldn't have supermarkets. You wouldn't have electricity coming in from the grid. You wouldn't have a grid. The grid would just fall down. No one would ever rebuild it. It'd be done. One and done. Done for all time. And you get fresh water. Our fresh water here where I live, it comes, 300 miles from some reservoir up in the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's fed by snow. Would that continue? I don't know. I don't have a well. So if that doesn't keep going, then I have no narrative. I got no story about how I'm going to survive here. And, without all those things, you'd have to do something different, something else. And at the end of my video last time, I was talking about how we are going to have to do things differently. Our reliance on fossil fuels is a trap. We are in the trap. It's not a trap we're going to step into. We stepped into it 200 years ago. We are in the trap. It is a trap. And there's no easy way out of a trap like that. Like a fox that finds itself in a trap, sometimes you have to gnaw your own leg off, right? And that's kind of what they do. Sometimes when they can't get out of a trap, they have to lose a leg. And we're kind of in the same situation. We're caught in a trap, and we're going to have to suffer to get out of it if we can. Most of us can't. Most of us can't. They're in a trap, and they're in. There is no out. There is physics. Physics says, these people, some of these people, a lot of these people, most of these people, nearly all these people are in a trap they can't get out of, period. It's like walking across the ground and you fall into a hole. And assuming you don't break all your bones, you're down in this hole and there's no way to get out. It's just, wow, I'm in a hole and I can't climb the edges and there's nobody up there to get me out. And so I'm in a hole. You're trapped. Okay, well, that's it. That's your story now. You're in a trap and there's no way out. So we're in a trap with regards to fossil fuels and there's no way out. That doesn't involve some amount of suffering because we are dependent on these energy sources for every single thing. So if we have to stop burning them because of global heating, and that's a thing, and that's going to be bad news, do you want to die in the heat? Okay, so if you don't want to die in the heat and you want to somehow wrangle the global heating, because that's physics, then you have to stop burning fossil fuels and emitting CO2 into the atmosphere, which is what's causing the heat to accumulate. So you're going to have to stop burning fossil fuels. And when you stop burning fossil fuels, then everything goes away. So as individuals, we're not going to do that. Maybe we'll think about it, Maybe we'll do some little thing. We'll buy an electric car or something, right? Someone will tell us, oh, you should buy an electric car. You just charge it with electricity. There's no gasoline, diesel involved. Okay, maybe we'll do that. But since it's a global problem, on some level, it's really for nations to decide. But they're not going to do that because all their power and influence and privilege comes from us burning fossil fuels. So they're not going to do that. So who's going to do this? You're going to do this. And it's going to be difficult. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be scary. It's going to be humiliating. And all the same, you're going to do this. Every molecule of CO2 in the atmosphere has somebody's name on it. And if you buy an electric car, all the fossil fuels that went into making that electric car, just making it, and then delivering it to your driveway, and all the roads it runs on, and all the lights it has to stand at, and all the police that have to patrol the streets and burning fossil fuels and looking for speeders and criminals in their cars and everything that made it possible for you to park an electric car in your vehicle, plus the electricity you're charging it with, and everything about that, every single thing about that. And the tires that are on the car, same tires as every other car, and so on and so forth. It's all carbon. It's all carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere so that you can have all that. From the vehicle to the tires, to the street, to the traffic signals, to the traffic enforcement, all of it. It's all there for you and your electric car. There are all these fossil fuels being burned, and they have your name on it. Some part of that has your name on it. Some part of every road you travel is there for you. You own that. That's your responsibility because you're using that road. And you can think of it otherwise, but that's how it works. That's the actual system dynamics. That's where all that stuff came from. And they don't build roads like that outside my house, out in the boondocks. They don't need to because there's nobody out there driving. They build roads where people drive on them. And that's you. And that's me. And there's some part of that asphalt that we own. And there's some part of the asphalt repair every night that we own. And there's some part of everything, the lights, the highway patrol, all of it that we own. We also own some part of every accident that happens. And you and your electric car are all part of that. Go ahead, buy an electric car. But still, you own some of all of this. So what can you do if you want to not emit fossil fuels? If you want to not burn fossil fuels and not own some more, you already own some. You don't want to own more of the CO2 that's in the atmosphere. You don't want your name on any of that because you don't want to contribute to global heating. What do? Well, you're going to have to give up fossil fuels. That's what you have to do. You have to do that. And one of the reasons you have to do that is because the era of fossil fuels is going to end. It's going to end because it must end because of physics. We can't emit any more CO2 gas into the atmosphere from the combustion of fossil fuels. That's going to have to end. And when it ends, then you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose everything. I'm writing a short story. It's called It's Been 100 Days, and I'm on like day 56. I've been doing some of the other things. I can't get back to it, but it's about what happens to people and how they cope when the fossil fuels end. And they end because people just stop burning gasoline and diesel and coal and natural gas. They just stop doing that. How do they do that? Well, there's the entire global industrialized framework of life just collapses. How does that happen? Because there's some wars and there's some supply chain disruptions, and then there's a refugee crisis, and there's a collapse of law and order. And, cities can't figure it out, and counties can't figure it out, and states and governments can't figure it out. And pretty soon the food doesn't move, and the electricity doesn't move, and the water stops moving, and the natural gas can't be delivered to homes, and everything just kind of rolls up. You kind of roll it all up like rolling up a carpet. It just sort of all rolls up. It doesn't take very long. It happens real fast. And people have to start deciding to take responsibility for their survival. I wrote the book. I've given a lot of thought to it. And it's ugly, and it's humiliating, and it's scary, and it's dangerous. And on the flip side, it's invigorating and stimulating, and people have purpose, and people are working with each other, and they don't even notice, to be honest. They don't even notice. They just do what they have to do. And I think that's how it's going to be. I think we're going to have to stop burning fossil fuels. And you, for all the things you may not be responsible for, you are responsible for your own survival. That's you. And you've been maintaining your survival and enhancing your survival and ensuring your survival by burning fossil fuels because that was the option laid out to you. And if you didn't have that, and if it was 20,000 years ago, your responsibility would be to find the nuts and the tubers and the insects and the things and the snakes and the lizards you have to eat, and to build shelter from willow reeds and find the fresh water and collect people around you and form a tribe and form a village and put up a perimeter and protect the children and protect the domesticated animals. That's you. You have to do all that. Except you're not doing it alone. Now you're doing it with a community. And pretty soon, when there are strangers that come to the gate, you have to decide whether you want them to come in or not. And when people attack you, you have to defend yourself. And if or let them come in. Hey, we need more people, and we can, if as long as you work and you agree to help and you agree to be responsible for some part of what we're doing here, well, then you're welcome. That's another way to handle the same thing. But the point is, you have to do that. You have to take responsibility for every single thing. Do you have clothing? Then you figured that out. Do you have food and water? That's because you figured that out. You made that happen. Do you have shelter? Well, if you do, it's because you figured that out. You made that happen. And you had materials all around you. You had the abundance of the world, and you just figured it out. And that's what people have been doing for the 300,000 years that peopling has been going on. And before there were people, humans, to do that, there were other types of creatures who looked a little bit like humans, but not quite. And they were doing it. And we didn't discover fire. Someone else did. And we inherited that. We didn't learn how to make stone tools. Some other group of human-like things did that, and we learned that from them. And when it came to be our turn, 300,000 years ago, humans strode across the earth. Then we had fire and stone tools, and we just built on all that innovation. We just kept going. And most of the time, we were just killing buffaloes and skinning them and tanning the hides and wearing the furs and digging up the tubers and eating the berries and the nuts and eating the animals and drinking the water and moving around and setting up new communities and getting bigger and splitting the communities in half. And one group goes this way and one group goes that way, and slowly we populated the earth. Stone tools and fire. And we had responsibility for every single thing that happened, every single thing. Now, there weren't very many of us, and the world was unexploited and wide open. And, now there's 8,000 million of us. But back then, when we were just getting started, maybe there was 1 million of us, not 8,000 million, 1 million or 2 million, not many. We were just spreading slowly through the earth, finding nuts to eat, finding berries. And that was our responsibility. We didn't have fossil fuels. We didn't have to worry about that, but we had other responsibilities, food, clothing, and shelter. We did that. We figured that out. So when we turn off the fossil fuels, as we must, because physics, then you're just going to figure that out. And the discussion I was having with my wife last night was like, how do you get people to do that? My answer is you don't. You don't get people to do things. You don't get people to stop using fossil fuels. In the story I'm writing, they don't have a choice. The fossil fuels just go away. No one even knows why. There's no overarching narrative about what happened to the fossil fuels. It's like they just stopped. And you can kind of surmise why they stopped, because the trucks stopped delivering them to the service stations where we as individuals have access to them. Why did the trucks stop? I don't know. Maybe the drivers were hungry and the supermarket hadn't had food in it for a few days. And so the drivers were hungry. And rather than get in a truck and deliver coal, diesel and gasoline to service stations, instead they parked the truck and they went looking around for food to feed themselves and their family. They just stopped driving the truck. And if they found food and they have enough food, well, then maybe they'll get back in the truck and go deliver the fuels. But they didn't, because there wasn't any. Because it was all dependent on fossil fuels. And the truck drivers weren't delivering the fuels because they didn't have food. And the food couldn't be delivered because there were no truck drivers, because there was no fuel. You see what happens? It's just a death spiral. It just goes down like this. Little things and then bigger things, and it just goes down like this, down the drain. And everybody did the thing they have to do, and they kind of figured it out as they were going along. And no one intended to crash the global economy. No one intended for there to be no fossil fuel deliveries, gas and diesel. No one intended for the shelves on the supermarket to be bare. No one intended for the crops to fail. No one intended for the crops not to be harvested or delivered or processed or kept in storage or whatever. Nobody intended any single one of these things. Nobody got up in the morning and said, well, I'm not going to do it because I want it to crash and collapse. No one had that conversation. But it happened. Individuals became responsible for their survival. And global heating was the reason why people had to do that. They just had to focus on survival. Your responsibility is to prepare yourself for a period of time when you don't have fossil fuels. Because without those, you're going to have a hard time surviving. Trust me on this. I've given a lot of thought to it. And you could give some thought to it now if you wanted to. And you could see that I'm right. It wouldn't take you long. It would take you 5 minutes to find all the things that are critical to your life that are dependent on somebody burning fossil fuels in your name and on your behalf. And you could do that. And you could say, well, I guess I couldn't have that. And I couldn't have this either. And I guess I wouldn't have my insulin. I couldn't just go to the pharmacy and get my insulin. And I couldn't go to dialysis and get my kidney dialysis without fossil fuels. I mean, that's how that's all working. And what about the food at my market? Where's that come from? It doesn't just magically appear on the shelves. Someone waves a wand and there's food on the shelves. You know, you see the trucks driving up and down the roads all the time. They got Safeway on them and they got Walmart on them and they're delivering things. Without that, there wouldn't be any things. And you go in there and the shelves would be bare. That sucks. So you are dependent. And you're just going to have to figure out your life without them because that has to end because of physics. We have to stop doing this. We have to stop burning fossil fuels because of what's happening to the Earth system. It's getting hot. And climate change is not your problem, even as much as they say that. You know, climate change and when the walruses and the penguins and the polar bears and the coral reefs and all that's what you're supposed to worry about. That's not what you're going to worry about. In the end, you're going to worry about survival. It's hot. Do you have an air conditioner? Can you get one? Oh, now you have the air conditioner, but do you have electricity? Where'd that go? Who was responsible for that? You know, whose door do I have to go pound on to get my electricity back? What if what if it's too hot to bring your electricity back? They just can't be out there in the heat. It's too hot. They're all home under the air conditioning. They still have power. You don't. And they're not fixing your power because it's too hot. They'll fix it tomorrow or the next day or the week after that because whenever it gets cool enough, then we'll be back out there on the towers fixing everyone's electricity. But until then, we're staying home. And if they stay home and the electricity stays off long enough, well then, wow. Okay, that's going to hurt a lot. You could have violence. You could have businesses shutting down. You could have all kinds of impacts. And by the time they fix the electricity a week or two or a month later, the damage is done. The damage is done. Because it doesn't take very long to damage a system like this that's so dependent on things like electricity. People didn't have air conditioning. It was fucking hot. That's why the electricity failed because it was so hot. But they couldn't have electricity because there wasn't any that was my wife. Because there wasn't any electricity. So, you're done. How are you going to survive? That's your responsibility. Survival has always been your responsibility. They told you get a job and you'll survive. Okay, so you did. And it's make money and you'll survive. And so you had money and you were fine. And all that was true. And yet, what happens when there's no fossil fuels? Or the things that rely on that just can't happen. Or it's too hot and nothing happens. And everything grinds to a halt. And what are you going to do? And you have to start thinking about that. What you're going to do, as with any other disaster, is you're going to try to find people who can support you, that you can work with to support each other. That's what happens when tornadoes come through communities, right? People band together and support each other and invite them into their homes and all this kind of stuff. Well, it's going to be a little hard when all your neighbors and your entire city and whole entire neighborhoods, entire cities, communities are under the same tent, right? There hasn't been any electricity delivered for a week, and the food on the shelves is stale or just gone. There's no air conditioning and everything is spoiled, and there hasn't been any food deliveries because it's been too hot. And now I find out there's no gasoline at the service station, so I can't even get out of this city. And now what am I going to do? Well, you're going to have to figure it out, like we did 20,000 years ago, with your neighbors, with your family, with your friends, with strangers. You're just going to have to figure it out. You just have to circle your wagons. And where's the water going to come from? Where's the food going to come from? How much time do we have? You're just going to have to figure it out. And you will. And some people won't, either because they don't want to, or they don't know how to, or they don't have the resources, or they're in a really dangerous, bad place and they just can't figure it out. I guess those people die. Because without fossil fuels, you don't have food, clothing, shelter, or anything else. And so that's it. That's it for you. It'd be nice if you could find some berries and some nuts and a squirrel to eat, but you can't. So that's it. You're done. We can't convince people to do this in advance because they won't. They don't think that they own any part of this. And they do. But that's hard to prove. So they don't care. And they're trapped in their life. And their life requires them to do this. And they have to go to the market, and that means they have to have money. And that means they have to go to work. And going to work means they have to drive a car. Driving a car means gasoline. So now they're burning fossil fuels. And the food came with fossil fuels. And all this stuff is all tied together. So they're trapped. People are trapped. But it is your individual responsibility to survive. That's a fact. The government isn't going to survive you. The city government isn't going to survive you. You are going to survive. How do you do that? Well, that fossil fuels. Well, for lack of a better term, I call it village life, but maybe we'll come up with a different term when it actually materializes. Neo villages or meta villages, or I don't know. They'll make up a whole new world, a word for it. Scruggs. I don't know what they're going to call it. They're going to call it something. And it's going to look like village life because that's how humans do things. That's how humans do things. We don't do things by ourselves. And in the absence of fossil fuels, which allow us to do our individual thing, and then we're going to have to do things collectively. We're just going to have to pull together. And how do you do that? What's that look like? I don't know. But when the day comes and it all kind of comes down to, wow, this is looking kind of grim, you're going to have to figure it out. And my wife says, well, hey, we can figure this out in advance. We can have models. We can have discussions. We can have planning. No, you can't. No one wants to talk about that. They're only going to do it when it has to be done. And of course, that's too late. And most people will fail. Entire communities will fail. And the people will have to hit the road. They'll be walking. They'll be pushing hand cars and their children in a wagon and, their cat in a basket and whatever. And they'll just go try to figure it out, hit the road and try to figure it out. And they'll fail. They will. And one estimate, my estimate, is that in the event that we lose access to fossil fuels, which we must lose, which must happen, it's as simple as that. Physics. We just have to stop this madness. So when the madness stops, as it must, one way or the other, deliberately or on accident, it's going to stop as it must, one way or the other. Then when it does, my estimate is that 99.9% of humans die. That's how dependent we are on fossil fuels. And that's how little access we have to suitable habitat that hasn't been impacted by 8,000 million people. And I'll do the math for you. A 90% die-off of humans, which sounds like a lot. I mean, that would be really bad, right? That's 9 out of 10. Leaves you with 800 million humans. That's too many to live without fossil fuels. That's more people than there were during before the Industrial Revolution. And we're in the Industrial Revolution, and that's about to fail. We're going to have to lose that. So you can't have 800 million. That's 90% die-off. That's 10% of the current population. 1% of the current population would be 80 million. That's a lot of people. Okay, that's a lot of people to try and support on this planet without fossil fuels. 80 million people? I don't know about that. There's no natural habitat. There are no nuts and berries. You'd be really hard-pressed. We have a river right here in our community that goes down, and I know there's blackberries down there, and there's some walnut trees and some other things that got planted on accident. But for the most part, there's nothing. There's carp in the river, and you could catch the carp and you could eat the carp. But how many people can be supported on eating trash fish out of a river full of pollutants with nothing else to eat? How many people can survive that? Like 10? Really, 10? And there's like close to 1 million people live here. And 10 can be supported on the local riverine system? 10? Maybe 100 people? How many percent of that is that of 1 million? It's tiny. It's like it's nothing. So yeah, 99% of the people dead leaves you with 80 million people. That's a lot of people. I don't know. I don't think so. But 99.9% die off leaves you with 8 million people. Okay, maybe now, finally, we're getting down to a number of people that can live on the habitat that's left that hasn't been paved over, hasn't been turned into parking lots, hasn't been turned into deserts, hasn't had all the trees chopped down, hasn't been turned into deserts and battlefields, hasn't been bombed, hasn't been gassed, hasn't been whatever. Okay, finally, maybe 8 million people find the place where they can survive. And, there's small groups of people, villages of people, hunter-gatherers, eating on the landscape. And if they manage not to eat every single thing that's growing or that's running around still, and remember, the planet's hot, it's going to be hard. Where's the rain? Where's the temperate climate? Where are the growth zones? Are the animals reproducing? Are they successful? We're in the middle of the sixth mass extinction, not even the middle. We're in the beginning of the sixth mass extinction. What if all the animals that you would like to eat go extinct? What if the only thing left is squirrels and pigeons? Right? What are you going to do? That's the world what we've created around ourselves. There's very little, if any, human habitat. Will it support 8 million people globally? Dunno. I don't know. But that's your responsibility at this point. That's your responsibility as far as I see it. When the fossil fuels get cut off and you're running around with your hair on fire trying to figure out how you're going to get to Starbucks for a latte, you're going to be in survival mode. I think that looks like village life, but wow, how are you going to do that? Maybe you could have that conversation now, but no one wants to talk about it, and neither do you. Neither do I. I'm not doing it. Well, I'm sitting here on this YouTube thing, but I'm an hour and 1 minute into it, and that's my commitment, right? 1 hour. Here I am. I did it. Did my hour. Now I'm going to go do something else. And, it's not creating village life. It's doing other things kind of related to that. I call it creating capacity. My wife and I are doing gardening and stuff, right? And we're not using our golden years to vacation in Las Vegas and gamble. That wouldn't count. So we're staying home and we're creating plants and we're creating capacity and talking to the neighbors about gardening and making food. And we're doing that, getting people to think about it. That's what we're doing. We're taking responsibility for that. You could too. You could do that. You can start thinking about it just in the privacy of your thoughts. Just sit down and don't watch the TV and don't do the doom scrolling on Twitter, and just sit back and think about your life. How could you do any part of this without fossil fuels and with all the services that are made possible by that? And could you do it by yourself, or would you need some help? Who would be your help? Would it be your family? Well, your family lives over there and the kids have a career over there. And well, okay, but if everything kind of went to rat shit, then maybe they wouldn't be that far away. Maybe you'd all come together. Where would you come together? Would it be where you are, or would it be where they are? Maybe you need to move. Maybe you're in a bad place. Maybe you need to move where your kids are. Maybe you need to move where your extended family is. Maybe you need to move into the mountains. Well, that kind of sucks. It's just full of trees and the soil is poor and there's no agriculture up there and there's very little rain. And you maybe know that because you're familiar with that habitat. So you don't go up in the hills because that's stupid. So where are you going to be? You're going to be down here on the flats where there's agricultural opportunities. Do you have the seeds? Do you have the plow? Can you work the soil? And how much soil is there? And how much of it already belongs to somebody? And will they share? Will they allow you to work the soil? Do you have soil? Are you a homeowner? Do you have a backyard? Is your backyard suitable for gardening? Or has a swimming pool in it? Well, that was a bad choice, not at the time, but turns out it was. There's water in it. That's not bad, but there's no soil in your backyard. What can you do? On the internet, clickety, clickety, clickety. What do I do? How do I garden when all I have is a swimming pool in my backyard? Maybe there's answers. Maybe there's something you could do in the meantime. You can start figuring it out. How are you going to survive without fossil fuels? Because you become alarmed because this guy was on a YouTube channel. He says, you got to figure this shit out. That's your responsibility. The government's not going to figure it out for you. They might help. They might have programs. They might have master gardeners or resources or discounts on wheelbarrows or whatever. They might help you. They might have seed. They might help you. They might even come into your backyard, like send volunteers into your backyard and pull up all the ornamental plants and help you make beds. They might do that. They might look around in your community, look around in your city or your county and see if they have programs like that to help you turn your backyard into a garden spot. Not bad. And then, of course, you could always put a deck over your swimming pool, drop a pump down into it, and use it as a water cistern. And when it rains, you let the rainwater run into the pool, and then now you have a nice cistern, and it's covered over, so it reduces evaporation. And once it's covered over with some kind of deck made out of redwood or pressure treated wood or something, you have to think about these things, right? Then you can put containers. You can put containers on the deck, and if it's strong enough to hold the weight, then you have underground water source, containers on the surface, and you grow plants in the containers. And what can you grow in pots and planters? And how would you make those? Where do those come from? Do you have those? Do you need those? Do you need to buy those? Do you need to make those? Do you need to learn how to make them? Do you have any tools for making things? These are that's the discussion you could have now. You could say, okay, folks, we don't have a pool anymore. Now we have a deck over the pool, and we use the pool to store water. And we keep the pool full. And if the water ever runs out, well, we have a narrative about where our water is coming from. We just pump it out of the pool, and we maintain the pool, and we keep putting rainwater in the pool. And pretty soon, we've got that figured out. You could do that. You could figure it out. Will you? Probably not. Why would you? Because I said so? Of course not. But you would have to, if we have to stop burning fossil fuels. You would have to do that. Do you have to do it now? It might be smart to do it now. While you're surrounded by all this rich civilization, it might be smart to do that now. But you don't have to. Probably you won't. But when all this lush, rich civilization collapses and evaporates, you're going to have to do something, because that's your responsibility. Your survival is your responsibility. Not the governments, not the UNs, not the IPCCs, not the COPs. Your responsibility to survive. Can you? Some people won't. They just won't. Probably 1 in 1,000 will survive. That's a 99.9% die-off. 1 in 1,000 survive. That seems impossible. That seems ludicrous. That seems like, gloom and doom. That seems like the sky is falling. No, it's math. It's math. All right. I can do math. I can look at the world around me, and I can look at the world the way it used to be. And I know how many people there were in the world, and how the world was back then, and how the world is now. And I can look at the people and how ill prepared they are for changes. And I can say, yeah, the fossil fuels, that's got to end because of global heating, which is physics. And so it's like a meteor. The meteor is physics. Oh, look, there's a meteor. Well, I guess we're in trouble now, right? That's physics. That's a statement of physics. And you could pray to God, and you could sacrifice a goat, and the meteor is just going to come down and hit the earth. And because of physics. Not because God wasn't listening, or there is a God, or there isn't a God, or you had the wrong one, or you didn't sacrifice the right goat for the right time of day, or whatever. It's because of physics. The meteor comes out and hits the earth and destroys everything because of physics. And so global heating is physics, and it's going to destroy everything, in particular when we have to stop burning fossil fuels. So we just shut that off. Leave the coal in the ground, leave the oil in the ground, leave the natural gas in the ground. Just turn it off because we have to, because of physics. It's not a meteor, but it's physics. And we understand it perfectly well. There's no question about it. And if you ever have any questions about it, well, just look at the headlines. Physics at work, killing people. And it'll get worse every year. And at some point in the future, as it keeps getting worse every year, and as people start to freak out and people start to ask questions, what is happening? Why is it like this? And someone's going to say, well, it's physics. Well, I'm saying that now. But 5 years from now, some reputable person, some president of some country or some parliament somewhere will say, oh, well, that's physics. It's called global heating, but it's physics. It's not God. It's not random. It's not chance. It's physics. Okay, we screwed the pooch. We changed the planet. The planet has been thus changed, and this is how it changed, and this is what you all did. Every CO2 molecule in the atmosphere, which is going to be there for 100,000 years, has someone's name on it. And all of you did some of that. And all of you own some part of all this, the asphalt and the electricity and the store. And you all own this. This is all here for you. You wanted this. We built this for you. It's on your behalf. You own it. It's got your name on it. It's got your initials on every square inch of asphalt. Someone owns every square inch of asphalt. That's you. And we did that. And you wanted it. And we did it for you. And you were happy with it. And no one complained. And now physics. Who knew? Well, people knew. I know. I'm telling you right now, it's physics. Someone 5 years from now, someone in high office will tell you, well, yeah, actually, it's physics. What are we going to do? Well, we have to stop burning fossil fuels. Oh, is that all? Okay, well, then do it. Okay, fine, great. I'm glad you approve. Oh, hold on. Before you do that, What does that change about my life? Everything. What do you mean everything? Everything. Pick a thing. Pick a thing. Your food. Yeah, that'll change that. You won't have any. Pick another thing. Electricity. Yeah, you can't have that either. Pick something else. Another thing. Pick a thing. Because everything is going to change. All the things. Everything. Things. Pick a thing. That's going to change. Anything you can pick. You're driving, you're flying, you're moving of goods, you're moving of money, your job, everything is going to change. Some of it, most of it, maybe even all of it. Every single thing you can name, including every single animal you can name, and every single city you can name. Everything that fits somewhere into your brain using language, everything you can name or point to is going away without fossil fuels. Well, then I don't care about physics. We have to keep burning fossil fuels, but you can't. You see, you're in a trap. I don't want to be in a trap. Save yourself. Save yourself from this trap. Maybe 1 in 1,000 people figures that out. That's your responsibility now. Save yourself from this trap. How? I don't know. You do you. You figure that out. I think a village life is a good place to start. So you don't save yourself. You save your neighbors and they save you in turn. And you all pull your resources and you work together and you figure it out. And you find places to grow food and you find ways to deliver water and you harden your perimeter and you keep the zombies out and you circle your wagons, find the people who understand and you all work together. And, by the time everyone's dead, your community is the 1 in 1,000 that ain't. Glory be, right? Wow. We worked hard. And we were first movers. We tried first. We circled our wagons first and we got to know our neighbors first and we found the right people. We were the first to do that. And we got into gardening before anyone else and we were first. And we helped other people get into gardening, but they wouldn't have if we hadn't. And so now we're growing food. It's because someone went first. And after someone went first, someone went second. And pretty soon there's a bunch of people that are doing it and you've got it figured out. And you all know each other and maybe you're even eating meals together, right? And so pretty soon when the fossil fuels go away, because they must, because of physics, as it happens, when the fossil fuels go away and you've all collectively figured out how to do some things that are important, like food, clothing, and shelter, right? You've got that nailed down somehow. Well, then you're okay-ish. It's still going to suck. It's still going to be dangerous. It's still going to be terrifying. It's still going to be humiliating, but you'll be, maybe, if you're lucky still. I mean, there's lots of ways it can still go sideways, but let's say it doesn't go sideways. So you and your group are the 1 in 1,000. And you didn't win the lottery, although there will be people who win the survival lottery. What you did was you figured it out because you accepted that was your responsibility to figure it out for you and your family and your neighbors and your community. And you all had the same vision for what your responsibility was vis-a-vis not having fossil fuels someday. And you figured it out. You don't have to figure it out. You could die. That's also a solution because it is. The dinosaurs couldn't figure out the meteor, so they died. Not their fault. And people who can't figure out how to survive without fossil fuels, which you're going to have to do, or if you don't, you die. That's not your fault. We're not going to hold you to any standard for not doing that, for not surviving. But it happened because of physics. It wasn't a meteor, but it was still Earth system dynamics. It was still global heating. It happened. It's a thing. And some people figured it out and some people just didn't. Not their fault. They're not bad people. They're just not people anymore. Do you want to be people? It's kind of nice. I like being people. Most of the time. So how do we keep being people without fossil fuels instead of being compost? How do we keep being people instead of becoming compost? You could work on that. And you have to imagine a world without fossil fuels. And you have to imagine a world where you're part of a village and you like the people in your village and they all work hard and you work hard and you take care of each other. And when one of you gets sick, the others pull your weight for you. And then when you're back up and you're moving around and you're happy to be well again, well, then you pull the weight for the next person who gets sick. Or some woman gets pregnant and she has a baby and she can't work anymore. And everyone else is happy to see the baby and they're happy for her and they're proud of her. And now we have a new baby in our village, and that's growth, that's life, that's survival, right? We survived. Woman had a baby. That's survival. That's what it's all about. Women having babies. So great, good on you. You do you for a little while. And the baby is important. You take care of yourself and your baby, and we're going to do the work that you used to do before you had your baby. That's village life. And when people get too old to work, and or they break a leg and they become lame, or they have a heart attack or a stroke, and the part of the body doesn't work anymore, then we take care of them because they worked. They did the best they could. And now they're a person who can't really work, but we still value them because they're part of our village, they're part of our extended family. And we just take care of them because that's how people used to do it. They didn't throw people under the bridge, under the bus. For one thing, there was no buses back then. They took care of their community members. Broken legs, all their teeth fall out, whatever. Keep feeding them. We like them. We like seeing them. They're part of our community. They have wisdom. They have advice. They have capacity. And maybe they're too old to work in the fields, but they can watch the little children and they can take care of the animals and collect the eggs. And sometimes we need their help identifying which of these two mushroom types is edible. And because they know, because they ate that one and they've never eaten this one before, but they've eaten that one. And so they can vouch for that one being, and so now you have a food, you can eat that. And they remember that and they pass on the wisdom. And that's your village. That's how we used to do it. And you could do that. I don't know how you're going to get started. I can't help you with that. But when the fossil fuels are done and gone and the shelves are empty and the electric grid fails and no one's managing the nuclear power plant anymore, and the city government collapses and everybody scatters like rats abandoning a sinking ship, then you're going to be standing there with your neighbors in a circle in the middle of the road looking at each other like, well, now what? Any ideas? And if you've been gardening together and helping raise each other's children and having community meals and potlucks and getting to know each other and celebrating life and celebrating death, then when the time comes and you're all standing in the street and you're all circled around, you're all looking at each other with a blank stare, you're like, well, we knew this day was coming. Yep, we sure did. Well, here it is. You think we're ready? I think, yeah. I guess we're going to find out if we're ready. We've been kind of edging ourselves that way. It's been great. It's been great knowing you people. We've had some great meals and I've really enjoyed being your company, but now the whole thing has gone over a cliff and here we are standing in the middle of the street, circled around, talking to each other about what just happened. But how about we just keep doing what we're doing? Is that okay? I mean, what else? Anybody else got a better plan? No? All right, here, this is it. This is what we got. We are the 1 in 1,000. Maybe you can pull this off. Let's just do it. I feel good. I feel great. I feel great about you people. I think we can do this. We've helped each other through hard times. We've had great times together. We've prepared food. We've helped each other through the stages of life. This is now just another thing. The collapse of civilization without fossil fuels. And there's no food and there's no electricity and there's no deliveries and they're still delivering water and that's a good thing. And so-and-so has a swimming pool full of water and we can all collect rainwater and maybe we can figure something out. You ready to go? And then they do a group hug. And they say, I love you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here right now. I wouldn't want to face this alone. Thank you for being here right now. And I want to be here for you, all of you. And I'm going to work hard. And we're all going to work hard. We're going to figure this out. What's our first step? What do we have to do first? And that's where you want to be. You want to be right there. That's where you want to be. That's the conversation you want to be having. Not get the AR-15 and get in the monster truck and we're going to head for the hills. That's not where you want to be. That's going to suck. That's going to end in your death and probably the death of many others because you're the one with the gun. That ends in cannibalism. But if you're in that circle of people standing in the middle of the street with no cars going anywhere, and there's no lights, there's no traffic signals, there's no electricity, there's no food on the shelves, and there hasn't been for a week, no one can get gasoline at the service station. The service station is closed down, the lights are off, and we don't have no idea what we're going to do. You want to be standing in that circle of neighbors in the middle of the street with your arms crossed and just, what do we do? And you want the answer to be, here's what you want. You want to be that person who's standing in that circle of neighbors. Everyone is frightened, and the children are frightened, and they're all standing around looking at the adults and wondering what's going to happen now. And all the children know something terrible has happened. And mommy's scared, daddy's scared, and mommy and daddy were fighting, and mommy cried, and they don't know what to do. And you want to be standing in that circle of people, because what you're going to say is, you know what, folks? We just keep doing what we've been doing. I know all you people. I trust you. I trust you. And I want you to trust me. And I just want us to keep doing what we've been doing, except more of it. And, hopefully we do it even better, and we're more focused on it, and it's more desperate, but we just keep doing it. We just do it left, right, and center. We just do it 7 days a week. You got nothing else to do. You got no gas. You got no diesel. You got no electricity. What are you going to do? You're going to do food, clothing, and shelter. You're going to do it balls to the walls. Here we are. You're my neighbors. I trust you. I like you people. I've raised your children. We broke bread together. We helped each other with our gardens. We broke the soil. It's like a sacred act. Breaking the soil together, planting seeds. It's a sacred act. You and I, and all of you people, everyone here in this circle, we've done this. Now we have to do it. We practice, but now we have to do it. This is it. This is our responsibility now. Survival. That was always our responsibility. And now it's totally in our lap. And I think we can do this. And you have a group hug, and you say, okay, what do we do first? Get out a piece of paper and a pencil, and someone start taking notes. What do we have to do first? What do people need individually? What's your situation? What do you got? What resource do you have? Do you have water? Do you have food? Do you have solar panels? Do you have batteries? Come on. What resources do we have as a community? All right, let's circle our wagons. Are we worried about security? Yeah. Then we need to build walls, fences, something, right? Okay. Well, how are we going to do that? Do we have tools? Do we have materials? What do we got? You just sit down and you figure it out. That's the book I'm writing. It's been 100 days. It's been 100 days. How they figured it out. Spoiler alert, they do. They do. Well, I can tell you right now, they're not bitching and screaming and firing their AR-15 into the air and flying their flag upside down. They're not doing any of that crap. They're circling around and they're looking at their neighbors and they're saying, I trust you people. I know what you people can do. I know what I can do. I know we can do this together. And for 100 days, they just go at it. They just go at it. I've written the book. Trying to write the book. We have a big heat wave coming over the next few days. Maybe I'll sit in here under the air conditioning and finish the book. Why not? Get it out there. The handbook, right? We call it the handbook on how you do it. This is what you got to do. And this is what happened. And it doesn't matter what happened. It'll happen differently. But it doesn't matter. It's going to happen because of physics. This madness must end, and the madness ends. And when the madness ends, something else starts. A new beginning, a new civilization. We're going to have to build it back from the rubble. But hey, it'll be something that works, right? By definition, if we can pull this off, it's something that works because it did. And for the groups that can't figure it out, it doesn't work. And so eventually 1 in 1,000 have figured it out. And there's communities of 100 people or 200 people or 300 people, and they figured it out. And then they get to be the ones that start over. And they have a different set of rules now. Then the rules are predicated on, well, you can't have fossil fuels because of physics. And now we can't even get at them anymore because of physics. So that was fun. And we have things, we have internet, we have cell phones, and, maybe we keep them, maybe we can't. But anyway, moving forward from here without fossil fuels. And of course, the planet's hot and there's a 6th mass extinction and the landscape has been completely and permanently altered. And okay, so this is a different set of rules, but let's go. You can do this. You have to start thinking about this, something you have to do. Your responsibility is to survive. That's your responsibility. No one's going to do that for you. You have to figure that shit out. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to think about it. Start now. Watch all my videos. Like, subscribe. Figure this shit out, okay? I'm here. I'm working on this. We're working on this together. Get other people working on this. That's your responsibility. Figure it out. Figure it out. Tell them. We got to figure this out together. Village life. Will you? No, if you keep coming back here, maybe you will. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to get you to do this. Let me know in the comments if I'm making any headway or not, all right?